93. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Today I would like to speak on how to approach magic in 2023. When we go to the numerology of 2023, we realize that this is a 7-year. 7 takes us to the planet Neptune, which would then make this a Neptunian year. As we know, each planet has its own approach to accomplishing tasks. We also understand that Neptune is one of the outer planets. And whenever we are dealing with the outer planets, we are more so dealing with the background energy or the background atmosphere instead of direct events, which are dealt with via the inner planets. So if we are dealing with the subtle energies of reality, specifically the spiritual force, as we call it the spirit world or the spirit realm, where spirit becomes real. These are the forces of Neptune. As Neptune has the same attributes as the dark side of the moon. In other words, all of the witchy attributes, all of the attributes that are more forbidden, taking us into the mysteries of Lilith and the dark goddess. As the 7 represents the waters, but the waters are bloody, which represent an elixir, as 7 is the number of alchemy. And one of the goals of alchemy is to create elixirs so that you can maintain your youth. So what does alchemy have to do with Neptune? As Neptune represents the psyche, the collective unconscious, tapping into what we call the Akashic records. When it comes to alchemy, especially of a psychological nature, what we are hoping to accomplish is not just shifting our consciousness, but opening new doors and new paths of consciousness. This is what the Kabbalah teaches, where we're not just going from one conscious state to another. We are opening new paths and forging new roads to be accessed at the appropriate time. So essentially, we are building a map, a system of checkpoints or anchors. And this system or map is how we can comprehend our consciousness, as the consciousness is compartmentalized. into several sectors or houses. So when we begin to understand the energies individually, we can begin to understand what happens when they begin to interact with each other. Because we are constantly interacting with the planets. Even though it seems like it is not happening, it's not going on, because it is purely psychological, dealing with the psyche. So it's not something that we can perceive with the naked eye. And this is the difference between the outer planets and the inner planets. The inner planets are more observable. For example, Saturn deals with age, and we can physically see how we age. That's a physical reality that can be perceived with the naked eye. But once we go beyond the borders of Saturn, now the subtle energies of the outer planets can be perceived. We just have to use what we call the third eye. We have to evolve into the astral sight. And this is how we can begin to perceive what we call the spirit world or the astral plane. The more aware we become of the subtle forces, the subtle realities, the more understanding we are granted of the physical realities, as everything that occurs in the physical plane has already occurred elsewhere in the subtle worlds. So being able to perceive the subtleties allows us to what we call predict the future. And through the art of prediction, are we able to know what energies or what portals, what gateways will be opened at which particular times, and how we can best utilize these energies depending on what we are attempting to accomplish. This is what it means to be alchemical, because we are working with various elements and their combinations. So when we know what forces we have available to us, we have a better chance at understanding what combinations or what elixirs we can bring forth from our magical workings, which are mostly psychological. Because if we are dealing with the psyche, we're not dealing with the world of effects. We're dealing with the world of cause. So this type of work isn't work that is done physically. The only thing that is done physically is the preparation. We only prepare ourselves physically for what is to come in the astral space. So this is why somebody will want to perform yoga or breathing exercises. All this is to prepare yourself for the other side. It's not necessarily to achieve any enlightenment or peace as that is obtained spiritually. So all the work that is done in the material world is then redirected, transmuted into a more subtle form. And that becomes the currency that allows us to access the Akashic records. So we must understand that the magic, the techniques, the spells, all this must be done from the lower mind, Not the higher mind or the higher self, but the lower mind or the lower self. As Neptune introduces us to our chaos. The subtle chaos. So not the chaos that can be perceived with the naked eye, the chaos that can only be perceived with what we call the third eye. As we call our shadows that are hidden in the depths of the consciousness. So this year of Neptune is to explore the depths of the consciousness. The depths of your psyche. The places we normally don't go, the places that when we do visit, we tend to have nightmares. Because we're trying to perceive greater light. But some light in the shadow world is perceived differently. This is how angels can be perceived as demons. Not because we're actually viewing something demonic or wicked. It's just in a form that we don't understand just yet. So we begin to fill in the gaps, and it becomes whatever we think it is instead of what it actually is. So we begin to free ourselves from filling in these gaps with our preconceived notions and open ourselves up to the pure perspective instead of us thinking we know what's going on. We become more receptive and we begin to receive revelations and downloads instead of trying to think our way into different realities and dimensions. We cannot use our smartness. We must use our intuition. We must tap into the divine feminine, regardless of the gender. As the 7 is the holiest number, it is the most sacred number, it is the most spiritual number, it is the number of the God and the goddess. And what makes us the God and the goddess is not what occurs on the physical, as that is the results. So when we begin to deal with the world of cause, that's when we begin to perceive what it means to be the divine, and how we very well do have control over our destiny.